Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute, text number 28. Yesham Twandakatam Papam Jananam Punya Karmanam. This right? This is the verse we're up. Which verse we're up to?
Yeah, Mr. Raj, because yesterday Chandran Sai Maharaj had 4 lines.
4:9.
Yes. About Krishna. About Krishna.
I didn't know 4:9 was about Krishna. No, but what is that? So what do I do today? 28. Okay. Yesham Twandakatam Papam Jananam Punya Karmanam Te Dvandva Mohanir Muktva Pujante Mam Drita Vrataha Yesham Twandakatam Papam Jananam Punya Karmanam Te Dvandva Mohanir Muktva Pujante Mam Drita Vrataha. Yesham Twandakatam Papam Jananam Punya Karmanam Te Dvandva Mohanir Mukta Pujante Mam Drita Vrataha.
Yesham Twandakatam Papam
Yesham Twandakatam Papam Jananam Punya Karmanam Te Dvandva Mohanir Mukta Vrajante Mam Drita Vrataha.
Yesham Twandakatam Papam
Yesham Twandakatam Papam
Jananam Punya Karmanam
Jananam Punya Karmanam
Moham Nirmukta
Te Dvandva Mohanir Muktva
Vajante Mam Drita Vrataha.
Vrajante Mam Drita Vrataha. Tommy. Yesham Twandakatam Papam Jananam Punya Karmanam Te Dvandva Mohanir Mukta Vrajante Mam Drita Vrataha. Yesham Twandakatam Papam Jananam Punya Karmanam Te Dvandva Mohanir Mukta Vrajante Mam Drita Vrataha. Yesham, whose, to, but, Andagatam, completely eradicated. Papam, sin. Jananam, of the persons. Punya, pious. Karmanam, whose previous activities. Te, they. Dvandva, of duality. Moha, delusion. Nirmukta, free from. Bhajante, engaged in devotional service. Mam, to me. Drita Vrata, with determination. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Purport: those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. Those who are sinful, deceitful, foolish, sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it's very difficult for them. It's very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regular principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees. For in the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.2 that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahat sevam dwaram ahur vimukte. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. Tamo dwaram yoshitam sangi sangam. All the devotees of the Lord transverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendent loving service with determination. Yesham tvandikatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvanva mavanirmukva pudante ram drida. Persons who acted piously in previous lives and this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Namo Vishnuvaraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tiramane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shinivadi Paskatyade Siddharne. So what are the four classes of people who never approach Krishna? What's that? Okay. Yes. You missed one though. Begins with an M. No, that's the first one. Maya aprita jnana. And here they're translated as what? Those who are sinful, those who are atheistic, those who are deceitful, and those who are foolish, sinful, deceitful, and atheistic. And who's sinful amongst those four? Who are the mudas? How does Prabhupada translate the mudas here? Who they correspond to? The foolish, yes, the foolish. And how about the sinful? Know anyone who's sinful? What's that? I know, but these four, Nimam Diskritina Buddha, Nimam Diskritina Muda, Prapadinte Naradama, Maya Pritigyana, Asuram Bhavam Ashritya. So who's the sinful people of between the Mudhas, the Naradamas, the Maya Pritigyanas, and the Asuram Bhavam Ashrityas? Who's the foolish one? Oh, who's the sinful people? The Naradamas, yeah. And who are the deceitful people? What's that? Maya Pritigyanas. And who are the atheists then? Yes. And the opposite of that is the process here. So what's the process? What are the different stages in the process? The opposite of what's the first thing? In order to become less foolish, what do you have to practice? No one knows. Well, that was a pretty good guess. What is... Unfortunately, did we hear the purport? What did it say in the purport? What was the process? Don't worry, I mean, it took me around 20. I mean, what does it say in the purport? I mean, the second paragraph, something about that. First stage is one should practice what? Dum 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 dum. No, that's second. Before you become pious, you have to practice religious principles. And then one should, it says here, those that pass their lives practicing regulated principles of religion. So what are our regular principles of religion that we practice? Does anyone know? Does anyone practice any regular principles of religion? Where am I? I think I wandered into the wrong place. What regular principles of religion do we practice? No meat, fish, and eggs. We follow 3 of them. What's that? Okay. This is a really tough question. Non-violence. No illicit sex. No meeting. Gambling and die. We haven't had an initiation here for a long time, so we don't remember. So, these 4 principles, no illicit sex, gambling, meeting, intoxication, and illicit sex, intoxication, meeting, gambling, they correspond to what? Positive principles of religion. What is gambling? What's that? Truthfulness. Truthfulness. And, we have illicit sex, meeting, and gambling. And what about intoxication? No, illicit sex is cleanliness. The other 2 are sometimes interchanged. One of them is austerity, and the other is mercy. You've heard of that before, right? Introducing new conceptions. Be merciful. So this is a gradual elevation. So the first thing is being clean, being truthful, being merciful, and being austere. Otherwise, one cannot make any advancement in spiritual life. And then the next thing is, so to get out of the mode of ignorance, one has to practice those 4 principles. Now, people are suffering. Why do people approach Krishna? Because they're suffering. The people who are suffering the most are called what? Mudhas. And why are they suffering? Does anyone have any idea why they're suffering?
Because of ignorance.
We just said they're in ignorance. But why they're in ignorance?
I haven't been on the Because they want to be in ignorance.
They want to be in ignorance. Because they're sinful. So what are their sins?
They are not following the 4 regular principles.
Yes, that's right. If you don't follow the 4 regular principles, you're sinful, and if you're sinful, you suffer. People think they're enjoying, and at least according to our philosophy, they're suffering. There may be some kind of enjoyment, but at the end, it's more suffering. The example given by Prahladananda Maharaj is scratching an itch. If you scratch an itch, there's certainly enjoyment, but at the end is suffering. Then it itches even more. And what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita about that? I don't know, I never read Bhagavad Gita. Never asked Krishna, so I never found out.
We should control the greatest enemy of the soul at the beginning, in the beginning.
Yes. He says two things. We have avaratmika shakti and prapatmika shakti. Avaratmika shakti means it covers our consciousness so that we actually believe with this body. Not only we believe this body, but if you ask a cow, who are you? Of course, if you can ask in cow language, but he thinks I'm a cow. An ant thinks he's an ant. If you tell him he's a spirit soul, he's not going to be very much convinced. So the covering potency of Maya can make one even to think that one is an ant. Right now we think with this body, we're a human being. But imagine if you thought you were an ant. It wouldn't be very exciting, would it? 7 days a week you work, 24 hours a day, and all you get is a fraction of a grain of sugar. In one feast, we get more sugar than you get an ant gets in his whole lifetime. And the other is prakatmika shakti, impelling arita jnana etena, jnanena nityavarena, kamarupena kuntiya, dusprena analena cha. Thus a man's pure consciousness is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So what they call love is actually the burning sensation, like being in a fire. So one has to give that up. And when one regulates the senses by following those regular principles of freedom, as Krishna says, then the suffering goes down at least a little bit. And then what's the next thing after you're not suffering anymore? What do you have? What's the next thing you think about? Anyone ever suffer? Like you go to the dentist and you have a toothache and then you're suffering and then you go to the dentist and the suffering is ended. What's the next thing you think about?
Enjoy.
Yes. Anyone ever think about enjoying here? Because I know we're in a very austere bunch here. These things never cross their mind. Enjoying. One thinks about enjoying. So, a pious person, he thinks about enjoying what? What's that? Well, what if you were pious? Say if you're a pious, and what kind of food would you be interested in? What kind of food? Give me an example.
Mango.
Mango, yeah. Mangoes, gulab jamins.
Milk products.
Yeah. Rubbery. And things that are good. And if you're in ignorance, you'd be attracted to unmentionable things. So pious activities, piety means fresh air, clean water, nice food, and above everything, nice relationships with each other. Not looking to each other to exploit each other. Matrivat, paradareshu, paradwareshu, losravat, atmavat paradeheshu. Let's see. Matrivat paradareshu, paradwareshu, yosravat. Atmavat paradeheshu, yakpashiti sapanditaha. So nice relationship with people. Look at every lady as your mother. See everyone else's property like garbage in the street. See all living entities as being like your very self. So this is called piety. And if you're pious, then what's the next stage after being pious? Is that enough? Moksha. No, before you merge. There's a few other things. One other thing you have to do. It says, conquered sinful reactions. So what does that mean? You go, what's that? Not necessarily. Conquered sinful reactions mean you have to learn how to tolerate. Tolerance. Although sinful reaction, aporyamana machala pratishtam, samudram apa pravishanti yadvat, tadvat kamyam pravishanti sarve, sashanti vatnoti nakama kame. Persons who's not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into which is flowing into the ocean. And the ocean is always still, but is always being entered into the ocean, which is always still, is always being filled, but is always still. Can alone achieve peace, not the person who strives to satisfy such desires. And what are those desires? Anyone can give an example of any desire that may enter into our mind once in a while? Okay, bhukti mukti, yes, those in general. Vihaya kamayak sarvam pumam sharati nispriha nirmamo nirahankara sashanti madhigachite. One who gives up all desires of sense gratification, who lives free from desires, given all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. So many desires enter, and to tolerate them, that's called conquering sinful reactions. Not taking a knife. We won, all right. No, it's actually tolerance. So many things come and go. But tolerance doesn't mean simply we're suffering. Oh, I'm suffering. I'm suffering. Oh, I'm such a good person. So, no, it means suffer and at the same time think about Krishna. The only way of actually conquering sinful reactions is to focus the mind upon Krishna while we're going through the difficulties. Then one can accept actual devotional service. Because, generally speaking, the conditioned soul, ourselves, we're reacting. If things go well, we're trying to enjoy. If things go bad, we're trying to avoid getting out of our suffering. So we're reacting to good and bad all the time. Therefore, we're conquered by the sinful reactions. Rather than being aloof from them and doing something positive in devotional service, we're being influenced by our material circumstances and forgetting Krishna. But if one can tolerate, then one can actually begin real devotional service when one's motivation for doing the service is not to get something in the material world or to avoid some unfavorable circumstance, but to actually try to please Krishna. And is that the end here? What's the next step? Yes, it's the beginning. And what verse in Bhagavad Gita puts us on that, tells us we're on that stage. There are a lot of verses, but what's the most famous one? Yes. Go ahead. Do you know the verse? Yes, so that's the liberation stage. Liberation means that my motivation is not to avoid suffering or get something enjoyable in the material world. My motivation is simply to serve Krishna, at least beginning to learn to serve Krishna. Bhakti mam abhijananti yavanyasyasmi tatvata. So the beginning there is nishta, and then there is ruchi. It's like you put the iron in the fire, if you keep it in the fire, it's not exactly burning hot at first. It takes a while to heat up. So it heats up, goes from the stages of ruchi, which means you gain positive knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the next stage here. One is able to understand the personality of Godhead in truth because he's in ecstasy and enjoying all the time. So if we're in ecstasy and enjoying all the time in his association, then we can understand Krishna. If we're suffering, how can we understand someone who's always enjoying? Yeah, when we see the deities, we're saying they're always smiling. We're wondering, everyone's suffering. Why are they always smiling? Are they laughing at me because I'm suffering? But actually, they're always enjoying. And they understand that even the suffering we're going through is positive because it's helped us to get out of the material world so we can get into the realm of enjoyment. We didn't suffer so much, we just stay here forever. But because we suffer, therefore we become inquisitive how I can enjoy. If you're suffering, then you want to find out how to enjoy. You may find out the real way of enjoying, which is to accept devotional service and then rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To actually have, when our senses and mind become purified, then we can experience Krishna as he really is. It's an experience called Krishna consciousness. And then when the experience becomes a sakti, so enjoyable, and bhava, there's ecstasy, and then prema, intense ecstasy, then one can actually meditate and trance upon the personality of Godhead, because one becomes addicted to Krishna. One cannot forget him, even for a moment. So this is the process of getting out of the material world and getting into the spiritual world. And at the end of the purport, it says, the great devotees who go around the earth, not to collect mileage credit, because it doesn't do you any good any more anyhow. You don't know what mileage credit is, probably. Get a free ticket. But that's not why they go around. They go around to teach people the science of Krishna consciousness. And that the greatest sinful activity is what? What's that?
Not knowing one's constitutional position.
Yeah, one's constitutional position. That's the greatest violation of God's law, according to this purport. So the great devotees go around just to tell us that we're a Krishna servant, and when somehow or another we should take up the process. Otherwise, we're lost. And that's when it's reinstated in his own constitutional position, which is, I'm the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. It's not possible to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or to be fully in his transcendent loving service with determination. So it's not enough just to give up hankering and lamentation. We also have to learn how to see everyone in relation to Krishna and serve them appropriately. And then we can actually begin real devotional service beyond the neophyte stage. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? I already asked a lot of questions. Maybe you have some questions. That's my first question. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Well, I mean, I attended part of the lecture, so what I've heard, you were explaining, like, rising of the soul. And it struck me that I've never asked myself, and nobody asked the question, where does this param drishtva nivartate comes into the picture? At which stage it should come and comes? Because without higher taste, we are incapable of proceeding. In long term.
Yeah, it comes at the very beginning. Just like, for instance, if every morning you got up and took a hammer and smashed your thumb, and every day the rest of the day you're trying to figure out how to, cure it somehow or another. I don't know what happened, but my thumb sure seems pretty sore right now. And then one day you wake up and there's no hammer, so you can't bang your thumb anymore. You think, wow, it's been a really good day. And then someone says, yeah, because you didn't bang your thumb in the morning. You said, maybe I should stop doing that. It seems like I had a much better day today. So at the very beginning, we get a higher taste. We stop banging our thumb all the time. Start feeling. So gradually, when you follow religious principles and then act piously, don't we get a higher taste when we eat gulab-jamuns and samosas and pizza and ice cream? It's a higher taste. Offered to Krishna, of course. And then, so the first one was practice the religious principles and then act piously and conquer sinful reactions. If we're not battered around by our material desires, don't we feel a lot better? And we've actually conquered something. We conquered our mind. And then to accept devotional service, when we do even a little something out of devotion, don't we feel, and we feel that we're actually have accomplished something very important. And then, of course, rise up to the knowledge of the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to meditate in trance upon the Supreme Person. I don't think most of us haven't reached that stage yet. But anyhow, they were all progressively higher and higher tastes. Anything else? Yes.
Hare Krishna. It is mentioned that one accepts devotional service when all his sins are eradicated and their pious activities are well accumulated. But who is that in Kali Yuga? There is rarely such souls found, no?
You mean who have actually come up to the platform of actually accepting pure devotional service?
Yeah, the question is, or concern is then, who will accept devotional service, because no one has these qualifications?
Well, we've accepted. You haven't. I've noticed you've accepted devotional service, at least to some degree.
Yeah, what is the... we are not purified yet.
But sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. Just like, for instance, most of us are pretty much practiced in following the regular principles of religion. I haven't, you don't walk down, you open the door one day and you go into the store and there's Ukram with a bottle of beer. You would expect it to happen. So most of us were pretty much practiced in following the principles of religion. And most of us are acting piously. We're doing devotional service, which is the most pious activity. And for the most part, when we're chanting japa, we're learning how to conquer sinful reactions. We're trying to tolerate and chant it with attention. And sometimes we actually accept pure devotional service. We actually have periods where we're thinking about Krishna and we're doing things that to please Krishna. So we've accepted pure devotional service, just that we're not so steady at it usually. And maybe to different extents we were able to understand Krishna in truth. Otherwise, no one would ever give class. They'd always say the same thing. If we could remember that we're not the body and Krishna is God, we're his servants, we might even not remember that. But we have realizations, so therefore we've actually understand Krishna to different degrees in truth. And sometimes we may think about Krishna more consistently than others.
And when we approach people to present them, people that also don't have, how can they accept because they don't have these qualities or qualifications?
How can they accept? Because it's pure mercy. Because we tell them to chant Hare Krishna out of pure mercy. If they chant Hare Krishna, they immediately act piously. Immediately they're on the path of acting.
So mercy is the shortcut.
The mercy in this age is spreading the holy name. Teaching and spreading this philosophy. It's all in mercy. Because that's what it says. And Brahmande Brahmite Kon Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Leta Beach. Everyone's wandering up and down throughout the universe, but they're fortunate to come in contact with someone who has some knowledge and gives them the seed of devotional service. And if they accept it and water it, then they make progress.
So mercy cases. We are all mercy cases.
Yes, we're all mercy cases. I've looked around and I haven't seen any Shukadeva Goswamis around. We asked him what's your history? Well, I was in the womb of my mother for 16 years. And then some kirtan party came by. I decided to leave. So we must be all mercy cases.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanand.